Hello, it's Lexi at Cozy Tea Cafe over on Bookstagram, and today I'm going to be summarizing House of Flame and Shadow by Sarah J Maas, which is book 3 in the Crescent City series. If you're not familiar with these videos, they will be full of spoilers, so if you have not read Crescent City and you plan to, don't continue watching because there will be spoilers. Also, I think if you've gotten this far in the series, you know that there are also spoilers for another book series within here. So if you have not read that other book series, you might also not want to continue watching this video. Just a quick note for the summary. Bear with me because if you've read the book, you know that we jump between POVs like nobody's business. So I did my best to kind of lump different storylines together, but again, there is a lot of jumping around, so just stick with me and hopefully it is easy to understand. So we will just jump right in. This book picks up right where book 2 left off. So the Asteri is questioning Cormac's father and Einar, who is the Autumn King. We finally learn what his name is, and both of them deny any knowledge of their son's involvement with the rebellion. The Hind and the Hammer interrogate Hunt, Rune, and Baxian, and when the Hind tries to enter Rune's mind, he keeps her blocked out. Meanwhile, we know Bryce is in Prithian, and she's being interrogated by Amren, Asriel, and Rhys, who notably looks like Rune, in the Court of Nightmares. She explains that she was trying to reach Hell, but ended up there, and tells them about the Asteri, Midgard, and the Starborn Fae. Amren recognizes names like Thea and Peleus and confirms rumors that Fae vanished to another world around 15,000 years ago, and the Asteri sound similar to the Daglin that once ruled their world. Bryce shows them memories of the Asteri's weapons through the Veritas orb, and after taking a translation pill, the words tattooed on her back glow, and Amren recognizes it as the same language from the Book of Breathings. They bring Nesta to meet Bryce, and Nesta senses that Bryce's tattoo is made, and they leave her in a dungeon cell. Therian meets with the Viper Queen, who reprimands him for not lasting longer in the fighting ring, and gives him more of her addictive venom to get high. Meanwhile, Ethan, Flynn, Declan, Mark, the Fire Sprites, and the mystic Sigrid Fendir all investigate Bryce's disappearance and discuss freeing Hunt, Rune, and Baxian. Ethan has been helping Sigrid adjust to freedom, but her stubbornness shows that she's a true alpha. The crew runs into Sabine and her wolves in the meat market, and Declan and Flynn shoot at Sabine when she tries to attack Sigrid. Then the Viper Queen escorts them all to her office with Therian and Ariadne. The Hawk tortures Hunt, Rune, and Baxian, and while Rune lies unconscious, Lydia manages to reach him through their mental bridge and apologizes, but he refuses to forgive her. Later, Lydia convinces Rigelus to let her borrow Erithus, the imprisoned Sprite Queen, and he allows her to take Erithus for 1 week only because her light is needed for the Mystics to protect against the darkness of Hell when they travel down there. Bryce escapes her dungeon cell by teleporting through a grate and following her starlight through underground tunnels filled with water beasts. After Bryce falls asleep, Nesta finds her and attempts to bring her back, but Bryce's starlight causes a cave-in that blocks their route. Nesta reluctantly agrees to follow Bryce's star deeper into the tunnels, where they're attacked by a Midgard worm, and Bryce notes the similarity between the word Midgard and Midgard. Nesta reveals that Thea was once a high queen of their world, but she doesn't recognize the term Starborn. Lydia brings Erithus to Hildy, the hag of the Imperial Coven, claiming Hildy was caught with an Ophian communication crystal, and orders Erithus to burn Hildy as a traitor, but Erithus refuses because it goes against her honor. Apollyon and Adis appear in the prison to talk to Hunt, and he realizes Bryce never made it to Hell. The princes think they know where Bryce is, and they urge Hunt to stay alive so he can fulfill the purpose his father bred him for. In the Viper Queen's office, the Hind arrives and reveals herself as Agent Daybright and asks for their help freeing Hunt, Rune, and Baxian by having them disable the prison's cameras while she handles the rescue. Lydia then asks the Fire Sprites if Queen Erithus is trustworthy, and they say she's honor itself. Bryce, Nesta, and Asriel, who's been hidden until now, all continue through the tunnels and find ancient carvings left by Selene that warn about hidden traps, and Nesta uses her silver flame to trigger them so they can get through. Bryce tells Nesta and Asriel about Danica, her tattoo, and her world, and Nesta reveals she has an identical 8-pointed star tattoo from a bargain. Bryce has been deliberately luring a Midgard worm with her blood to distract them so she could escape, but when it attacks, she ends up returning to help them out of guilt. Nesta uses the mask to raise a massive skeleton to trap the worm, then kills it with ataraxia, and Asriel has to convince her to remove the mask before it fully takes hold of her. The Viper Queen offers to release Therian if Ethan agrees to fight one private match, and he reluctantly accepts. Meanwhile, Lydia uses her cycle as an excuse to avoid Pollux and secretly contacts Ophion to ask the remaining rebels to help rescue Rune and the others. Nesta admits this has all been a test to learn what Bryce is searching for, and says she's seen Bryce's star before, but never anywhere good. Rune meets Lydia on the mine bridge and tells her Bryce isn't in hell, and she says Rigelus has the mystics searching for Bryce, then he coldly tells her that she's dead to him. Bryce tells them about Midgard's gods, the Bone Quarter, Second Light, and Hunt, while they explain the cauldron and the made objects of the Dread Trove. Bryce realizes the horn must have originated in this world and come from the cauldron itself. They discover a carving of a cauldron on top of Ramiel, then see a massive door with an 8-pointed star. The door responds to Bryce's touch and opens to the prison, which is the last place Nesta saw Bryce's star carved. Therian thinks Ariadne will be fighting Ethan in the Viper Queen's private fight, but they find out Ethan will be forced to fight the Fendir heir. Inside the prison, Bryce sees another 8-pointed star surrounding a map of her world, which is where Nesta found the harp. A hologram of Selene, who notably looks like Rhys's sister, appears and reveals the true history of the Daglin. Her mother, Thea, was once enslaved by them before joining forces with Finn, the first High King of Prythian, and they see a vision of Finn pulling the Star Sword from the cauldron. They used the Dread Trove, which included the horn at that time, to overthrow the Daglin, and afterwards the Fey powers and lands were restored. Thea claimed the prison island as her court of dusk and twilight. Finn was later killed by a creature, and Thea ruled with Peleus as her commander until he betrayed her by leading her to Midgard through a portal opened by the horn and the harp, where she unknowingly encountered the Asteri again with new faces. Thea's armies slaughtered the humans on Midgard to take control, and then new shapeshifter Fae arrived and reported to Rigelus, which made Thea suspicious. Thea and her 2 daughters, Selene and Helena, discovered the truth and allied with Hel to open a portal and defeat the Asteri. Rune, Hunt, and Baxian attempt an escape by having Baxian bite off Rune's hand so he can slip out of his chains and grab weapons, but before they can free themselves, Rigelus, Pollux, and the Hawk arrive. Rigelus forces Hunt to surrender some of his lightning for an unknown reason, then he orders Pollux and the Hawk to kill a prisoner as punishment for Hunt's defiance. During the Viper Queen's private match, Ethan and Sigrid are forced to fight to the death. Ethan hesitates to kill Sigrid, but she dodges his punch at the last second, and his fist accidentally goes right through her throat and kills her instantly. Then he decapitates her when he pulls it out. And everyone around is watching, horrified. Selene continues her story and says that Thea and Adis became lovers while planning the rebellion. Humans discovered the Asteri had poisoned Midgard's water with a parasite that drained magic, and the Asteri created the drop to unleash the parasite in a blast of power to regain Fey immortality. When the Asteri attacked, Thea sent Selene and Helena back to Prythian with the harp and the horn, and gave them each a third of her star power, and told them to seal the portal forever. Helena sacrificed herself by staying behind, while Selene escaped with the Truth-Teller dagger, and then saw Peleus kill Thea with the Star Sword. Back in Prythian, Selene sealed the portal forever and transformed what's now the prison into a fortress for the Daglin's creatures. She then secretly passed the truth through her Night Court bloodline and made sure Thea's story was forgotten, but Asriel says that Rhys doesn't know this story, so it must have gotten lost over time. Selene warns that the Dread Trove could either destroy the Asteri or lead them right back to Prythian. They realize the horn is in Bryce's tattoo, and they decide she's too dangerous to return home, but Bryce fights back and causes another cave-in, and she falls into a chamber below them. Lydia gives Hunt and Baxian a medwitch potion to regrow their wings, and claims it's for future torture. Then she convinces Aerithus to help free the prisoners. Lydia has Hildy remove Aerithus' slave tattoo. Then Aerithus burns Hildy to ash, and Lydia asks Aerithus to burn her too, so everyone will believe she escaped after attacking them, and she can use her escape as a distraction. Bryce lands in a chamber with an Asteri, Vesperus the Evening Star, who is asleep in a sarcophagus, and then Bryce wakes her up and demands answers. Vesperus reveals that the Asteri traveled between worlds after outgrowing their own, and created the cauldron by pooling their power, and then created the Dread Trove from that. She refuses to help Bryce undo Midgard's parasite, and instead absorbs First Light from the prison itself. Nesta stabs her with Ataraxia, then Bryce summons both the Star Sword and Truth Teller to stab her again. Azrael shoots power at her, which she just absorbs, and uses that extra power to push Bryce's blades out. Then Nesta finally kills her by cutting off her head. Bryce is mad they lost a chance to learn more from her, and when Azrael and Nesta try to take her back to Reese, Bryce opens a portal to Midgard with the Star Sword and Truth Teller. The Crescent City crew leaves to rescue Rune, Hunt, and Baxian, while Ethan stays back to make things right. Hunt wakes up and Adis appears, and he suspects the Asteri may be using Hunt's lightning to try and raise the dead, and again hints that Hunt was bred for something special. He warns Hunt not to give any more of his power, and believes they'll kill Rune because of his importance to both Hunt and Bryce. Bryce returns to Midgard in the Autumn King's study, and he immediately puts her in Gorsian shackles and confiscates both the Star Sword and Truth Teller. As they trade information, Bryce learns he spent years studying why Fey magic has weakened using an orrery that reflects light, and has tried to add things to it to make the magic stronger. Bryce shares everything she learned in Prythian about the Asteri and the drop, which makes him realize the weakening magic is likely caused by the parasite. Lydia begins her rescue mission by killing the Hawk and helping Hunt, Rune, and Baxian escape. Declan has hacked the prison cameras, Flynn is coordinating outside, and Ophion is sabotaging the city's railway, while Aerithus sets off explosions in the Eternal City as a distraction. Lydia holds off Mordok and the Dreadwolves, while Hunt and Baxian carry Rune to the depth charger. Lydian jumps off a cliff into the sea to escape Mordok, and Therian believes she's dead, but Rune makes him dive in after her anyway. Lydia's dead body is recovered, but medwitches on the depth charger are able to put her back together, and she survives. Rune stays by Lydia's side until she wakes up, and he learns the two boys aboard the ship are her sons, Bran and Actaeon, who have been raised in secret by adoptive parents. Ethan asks Jessica for a necromancer to bring Sigurd back, and she only agrees if he becomes her assistant, then reveals the books in her gallery are survivors from the destroyed library of Parthos and contain human history from before the Asteri. She confesses she was once a priestess of Parthos, and the mayor helped her escape on a ship with the sentient books she smuggled out, but she was intercepted by Apollyon on the way back. He thought the books were weapons and cursed her with true immortality by giving her a piece of his power until she revealed the true nature of the books to him, so she's been able to pass herself off as a witch for all of these centuries. The Autumn King reveals that the sword and dagger can create a portal to nowhere when wielded together, and they have the power to unmake. Bryce tricks the Autumn King and puts the Gorsian shackles on him, and admits she came to him to learn what the Star Sword and Truth Teller could do together, then locks him in the basement closet, and uses his orrery to supercharge her starlight and open a portal to Hunt. Lydia wakes up and reunites with her sons and their adoptive fathers, David and Renki, but the boys recognize her as the Hind and are cold to her. Later, the Ocean Queen reveals that both the Viper and River Queens are offering rewards to get Therian back, but Bryce claims she is the Queen of the Valbaran Fae and says Therian serves her. Bryce tells the Ocean Queen about the parasite and asks if she can take them to Avalon, and the Queen agrees even though she thinks Bryce's rebellion will fail and says evacuating Midgard is their only chance of survival. Rune, Hunt, Bryce, Lydia, Therian, Baxian, Flynn, and Declan plan their arrival in Avalon. Bryce is confident she can get King Morven to give them access to the archives, despite Avalon's strict rule against women entering. Bryce and Lydia also ask the fire sprites to find Queen Erithis, help her reconnect with her people, and prepare to fight against the Asteri, and Bryce thanks Lydia for saving Hunt, Rune, and Baxian, and offers her support if she ever needs it. Jessica brings Ethan to Hypaxia and reveals she is now second in command of the House of Flame and Shadow. Hypaxia says her coven staged a coup to overthrow her, so she swore fealty to Flame and Shadow to avoid execution and still needs to swear her oaths to the Underking before she can resurrect Sigrid. Jessica reveals that she's paid the astronomer for years to find a way to undo Apollyon's grip on her soul. She explains that the Asteri has bred bloodhound wolves for generations and likely orchestrated Danica's death when they realized she was too strong and they couldn't control her. Bryce and the others arrive outside Avalon, and King Morven has already been expecting Bryce. Flynn's sister Sathia is brought in by the murder twins and explains that their family fled to Avalon when they found out the Asteri was coming to question them, and she warned Declan's family before they left. Morven reluctantly agrees to let Bryce access the archives after she shows him the Star Sword and Truth Teller and offers him the Autumn King's journal. Morven insists that Sathia marry one of the murder twins because unmarried Fae females aren't allowed in Avalon, so Therian impulsively offers to marry her instead, and they are married right then and there. Hypaxia attempts to resurrect Sigrid, but she returns as a Reaper and her soul is bound to the Underking. Hypaxia says the only way to restore Sigrid's soul is with a Thunderbird's power. Since Sophie Renast's body still contains traces of lightning and was never given a sailing, they decide to resurrect Sophie for long enough to shock Sigrid's soul, and Jessica says Sophie's body is in Avalon. While searching the Avalon archives, Declan finds an old map that shows dozens of islands surrounding Avalon, and later maps show them mysteriously disappearing around the time the Asteri arrived. Bryce remembers Celine's story about the Dusk Court's lands withering away and realizes the missing islands might be connected and tells everyone to keep searching. Morven confronts both Lydia and Rune about supporting Bryce. Meanwhile, Bryce, Hunt, Therian, Baxian, and Sathia enter the Cave of Princes and follow an 8-pointed star carving. In the archives, Rune, Lydia, Flynn, and Declan are continuously interrupted by the murder twins. Later, a Fae male thanks Lydia for secretly saving his family's lives years ago, and the tension is slowly loosening between her and Rune. Lydia finds records stating that Avalon's land sits on ley lines and used to be rich with earth magic, but something has been causing it to slowly rot beneath the mists. Ethan, Jessica, and Hypaxia feel rumbling and see that the Asteri have arrived and launched brimstone missiles into Asphodel Meadows, which leaves a large crater, and the three of them help by healing the people on the outskirts of that crater. Sathia asks Bryce what she plans to do for the Fae, but Bryce says she doesn't want to rule them. Baxian talks to Bryce and says Danica felt similarly about the wolves, and says she can still make a difference for the Fae who deserve it. Then Morven and the Autumn King show up in the caves with Flynn and Declan in chains. Bryce blocks them by collapsing part of the cave, and she and Hunt argue over her decision to stall them instead of fight them. They continue following Bryce's star down the tunnels, and she sees they're nearly identical to the ones in Prythian. The tunnel leads them to Peleus's tomb, and Bryce finds a hidden staircase that leads to a chamber below made entirely out of black salt, and there's a pitcher and a bowl inside, and Bryce realizes Helena used this chamber to communicate with the princes of Hell, so Bryce and Hunt drink from the bowl, and Adis welcomes them to Hell. Rune and Lydia finally talk about her past, and she reveals that she got pregnant during a fertility rite and staged her own kidnapping so her father wouldn't find out and take her kids. The Ocean Queen hid her and the twins in exchange for Lydia becoming an Ophian spy. Rune says her identity doesn't matter to him anymore. Then the next morning, they see that Morven, the murder twins, Flynn, and Declan have all vanished, and he thinks it's a trap to lure them into the caves. Therian and Baxian guard Bryce and Hunt's bodies while their minds are in Hell, and Adis brings them to Apollyon and Thanatos. The princes reveal that Thea split her power into 3 pieces before her death, one for Helena's bloodline, one for Selene, and the third piece was hidden in Midgard's ley lines by Helena. Helena created the prophecy to reunite the Star Sword and Truth Teller so her descendant could claim all 3 pieces of Thea's power and defeat the Asteri, and Bryce already has 2 pieces from her bloodline and then the caves where she found Selene. The princes also reveal they bred Hunt as a weapon made for Bryce specifically by giving him hellfire in the form of lightning through Apollyon. They originally bred a Thunderbird, but the Asteri had them all killed when they found out. Apollyon channeled his power into an angel scientist and had him willingly mated with Hunt's mom, but the Asteri executed the angel when they found out his connection to the princes. Apollyon's hellfire was what allowed him to kill the Asteri named Sirius, and Hunt's real name Orion is a nod to the fact that Orion was the master of Sirius. Hunt learns his lightning was always meant to amplify Bryce's power because it's too diluted to kill an Asteri on its own. They tell Hunt that the Black Halo crown can't contain the princes of Hell, and he could break free whenever he wanted. The mind connection ends, and Bryce and Hunt see that Morven and the Autumn King are waiting for them. Rune and Lydia go into the caves, and Morven and the Autumn King reveal they're handing everyone over to the Asteri and will force Bryce to breed. The murder twins control Sathia's mind to force Bryce to go with them, so she pretends to surrender before grabbing the blades and unleashing her starfire. She melts the twins' minds and melts the Autumn King's hand to bone. Then Rune reveals what the Oracle told him about being the end of his bloodline before killing his dad with the Star Sword. Rune is the heir, but he yields the Fae crown to Bryce, and then she kills Morven with Truth Teller, making her queen of all the Fae. Rune has a theory that Avalon's lands contain the last piece of Thea's power, so Bryce returns to the 8-pointed star and inserts the Star Sword and Truth Teller at the same time, which unlocks the hidden magic, and she absorbs the 3rd and final piece of Thea's power. After Avalon is restored and sunlight returns, flowers bloom, and the islands rise from the ocean. Declan gets phone service again and sees that the Asteri launched brimstone missiles into Asphodel Meadows and destroyed Ophian bases across Midgard. Then Ethan, Hypaxia, and Jessica arrive in Avalon, and they all share what they've learned, including what happened to Sigrid. They find out that Sophie's body was destroyed when the castle collapsed, so Hunt offers his lightning stored in quartz as an alternate source of power. Bryce asks Hypaxia to work on creating an antidote for the parasite before they work on saving Sigrid. Hunt asks Baxian to be his second in command if anything happens to him, and Bryce sends Flynn and Declan back to Lunathian to warn Isaiah and Naomi, then tells Therian to ask the River Queen to shelter as many people as she can. Hypaxia experiments on the parasite in Midgard's water and finds a temporary cure using all of Hunt's stored lightning. Ethan tests it on himself and feels stronger immediately, and Hypaxia tells him he's powerful enough to challenge Sabine if he wanted to. Fury, June, Randall, Ember, and Emil, who now goes by Cooper, all arrive safely in Avalon, and June forgives Bryce for getting her promoted in the ballet. Bryce and Hunt travel to the Northern Rift to open it for Hell's army, but they see the guard's post is abandoned and realize the Harpy was resurrected using Hunt's stolen lightning. Ethan ignores Jessica's warnings and goes to the wolf den to tell everyone about Sigrid and the parasite. Sabine brings out Sigrid and the astronomer and twists the story to make him look like Sigrid's murderer and names Sigrid as Prime Apparent. The Prime strips Sabine of all of her titles and names Ethan his successor, but Sabine kills him and Sigrid sucks out his soul, then does the same to the astronomer. Sabine attacks Ethan, but he kills her and the wolves accept him as their new Prime. While Rune and Lydia sneak into Lunathian to find Isaiah and Naomi, Therian and Sathia ask the River Queen to shelter people in the coming war. The River Queen's daughter is still upset at Therian for breaking off their engagement, and she refuses to help, but the River Queen says Therian is a good and selfless person and ultimately agrees to help, and reveals that she has secretly opposed the Asteri for centuries and wanted to find Sophie and Emil to protect them, not to use them as weapons like Therian originally thought. Bryce opens the Northern Rift to Prithian and asks Nesta to lend her the mask. She sends her parents through as collateral until the mask is returned because she knows Nesta will take care of them. Nesta reluctantly agrees, and when they close the portal, the Harpy attacks. Naomi, Isaiah, and Celestina show up as Bryce uses the mask to command the Harpy to stop and to rest, then she withers into dust, and Bryce takes off the mask. Rune and Lydia talk about a future together, then Lydia finds out Pollux has kidnapped her sons. Meanwhile, Hunt confronts Celestina for betraying them at the end of Book 2 by selling out their whereabouts to the Asteri, and Isaiah says she defied the Asteri to come help them. Hunt reaches into his power to destroy his halo and also Isaiah's, and threatens to kill Celestina, but Bryce convinces him to spare her because ultimately she was just trying to protect herself and Hypaxia, and it ended up costing her her relationship with Hypaxia. Bryce uses the mask and her new starborn power to raise the fallen angels from the rebellion as an army, but only their wings remain, so she restores their souls and puts them in the mech suits. Then she reopens the Northern Rift and welcomes Adis and Hel's armies into Midgard. Ethan asks Jessica for one final conversation with Connor before he leaves with the parasite antidote, and Rune tells Bryce that Pollux attacked the Depth Charger and kidnapped Lydia's sons, so Bryce says they're coming to help immediately. In the Bone Quarter, Hypaxia and Ethan confront the Underking, and he says he and the Reapers originally came from the Void, and mentions that Urd's true name is Word, like Wordmark from Throne of Glass, perhaps. Ethan finds Connor and tells him everything they've learned, but Ethan isn't able to talk back because the Underking prevents any of the souls from speaking in the Bone Quarter. Ethan attacks the Underking with his new strength, then Jessica arrives and tells Hypaxia to give the Underking the killing blow, and when the Underking is dead, Hypaxia becomes the new ruler of the House of Flame and Shadow. Now that Hypaxia is ruler, she commands Connor to speak, and he says the other souls went through the gate to sacrifice themselves willingly for Second Light, that they then siphoned into a bullet for Bryce to use in the Godslayer rifle. Therian and Sathia are cornered by the Viper Queen, and Sathia recognizes one of the guards as her childhood friend Colin. Ethan and Hypaxia arrive and use their new titles to force the Viper Queen to drop the bounty on Therian. Then Bryce records a message declaring herself queen of the Valbaran and Avalon Fae, while Hunt rallies the people of Midgard to fight back. Then they release the footage of Bryce killing Micah to cause chaos and distract the Asteri. Ethan goes back to the den and sees Perry is the only wolf remaining after Amelie led the pack to safety until the chaos dies down. He buries the Prime and tells Perry to warn the wolves about the Asteri, then he leaves for the Eternal City. Meanwhile, Therian prepares to leave, but he finds a note from Sathia telling him she's going to rescue Colin from the Viper Queen. Bryce and the others reach the Eternal City with Hel's army, and Bryce finds the fallen angels' wings and uses the mask to send their souls into the mech suits. Rigelus finds her and reveals he knew Bryce would open the Northern Rift, so he sent brimstone missiles to destroy the portal, but he doesn't know that the other half of Hel's army is still waiting there. Lydia finds the Mystics and learns that Pollux has her sons beneath the First Light Core, and Rune sees it's a trap, but Lydia insists on going anyway. Rune is sure she'll die if she goes because she's not thinking straight, so he shoots her in the leg so he can go by himself. Hunt, Bryce, and the three princes of Hell battle 5 of the Asteri. Bryce combines the Star Sword and Truth Teller and stabs them into Polaris, which opens the portal into nowhere like they predicted, and Bryce feels drawn into it. Hunt sends his lightning into the blades, and when Hellfire meets Starfire, it tears Polaris apart, and he's sucked into the portal, but then they notice that other things are starting to get sucked into this portal. Rune calls Hunt through his Umbra Mortis helmet and says they're needed at the First Light Core, and Bryce teleports into a quarter full of Deathstalker demons, and Therian shows up and summons a wall of water to save her. Therian goes back to find the bag of antidotes and sees only 2 survived. Then he finds Lydia injured and gives her an antidote just as Pollux shows up with her sons and Rune at gunpoint, and he reveals the Mystics lied and it was all a trap. Meanwhile, Hunt and Bryce reach the First Light Reserves and battle Rigelus, while Bryce distracts him and Hunt secretly shoots his lightning into the crystal core. Ethan finally reaches the Eternal City, but the antidote vials are all crushed in an explosion, but he still has the Godslayer rifle and Connor's Second Light bullet. Pollux threatens Lydia's sons, and Rune offers his own life in exchange and says he's Lydia's mate. Pollux shoots Therian, then shoots at Bran, and Lydia uses her newly strengthened power to shield him, then incinerates Pollux from the inside out. She tells Rune to take her boys to safety and to give Therian the antidote and take him to a healer to save him, Then it's revealed that Lydia and Danica met years ago, and Danica used her bloodhound abilities to tell Lydia she came from a fire-wielding bloodline of Fae shifters, and Lydia remembered rumors of a legendary descendant of hers named Brannon Galathinius, who is Aelin's ancestor from Throne of Glass and founder of Terrasen, and also who Lydia named Bran after. Outside, Lydia kills Mordok and the Dreadwolves and sees Queen Erithis and the Fire Sprites, Sassa, Rithi, and Milana destroy the Brimstone missiles and all of the war machines. Rune takes the final antidote and discovers that he now has healing power, and he saves Tharion and feels another Asteri die as time slows. Bryce is exhausted and almost out of power when Ethan shows up with the Godslayer rifle and Connor's bullet, and she uses the last of her power to teleport to the First Light Core alone. Rigelus and the other Asteri are in the chamber with her, and they tell her that destroying the core will destroy Midgard, but she shoots the bullet into the core anyway. Rigelus grabs her, and she uses the horn to absorb his power and open a portal that sucks up the core, the Asteri, and herself into space before it can destroy Midgard. Rigelus breaks free and attacks Bryce, and from below, Hunt sees her in the black hole and follows her into space wearing a mech suit that's being controlled by Shahar's soul, and he puts on the mask. Shahar guides the final Brimstone missile as Hunt blasts Rigelus further into the black hole before he then grabs Bryce and pulls her back out of the portal while Adis and Apollyon hold it open. They land back in Midgard, but Bryce is dead. Both Hunt and Declan try to revive Bryce, but they can't, so Hypaxia summons Jessica, and Jessica sacrifices her own immortality to bring Bryce back. In the space between life and death, Jessica tells Bryce to protect the Parthos books and the gallery's collection, and Bryce sees Connor, Danica, Lahaba, and the pack of devils in the distance, and she chooses to live, and she wakes up. In the aftermath, Isaiah offers to let Hunt lead the angels, but Hunt tells Isaiah he's a better leader than him. Bryce and Hunt return to the Night Court and give back Truth Teller and the mask and retrieve her parents. Then Bryce gives the Star Sword, aka Gwydion, to Nesta and says the Starborn era is over in Midgard and she believes it belongs with Nesta because of her 8-pointed star tattoo. Then they return home. The princes return to Hell. Lydia brings her sons back to their adoptive dads, and Tharion goes back to the meat market to find Sathia. Bryce calls the Fae together and dismantles the royal houses and sells all the royal properties to fund the rebuilding of Asphodel Meadows. The wolves start to return to the den, and Hypaxia continues making more parasite antidotes for everyone in Midgard. Bryce reopens Jessica's gallery and keeps the Parthos books safe with the help of the 3 fire sprites. Baxian stays in Avalon to rule in Bryce's absence, and he calls Bryce and tells her that dozens of flying horses have suddenly appeared on the island, which may be connected to the Pegasus of the Dawn Court and Akatar, potentially. And that is where book 3 ends. So that is everything that we know before the next Akatar book and potentially another Crescent City book in the future. But as always, if there are any other books you would like me to summarize, just leave me a comment and I will do my best.